You don't wake up one morning and suddenly know your body is betraying you. It's quieter than that. Subtler. Like a slow leak in a sealed room, no alarms, just breathlessness. I was 28. Living in Halecroft, one of those picture-perfect towns that look good on postcards but rot under the surface. I taught art at the local community center. Had a boyfriend everyone called a catch. My mom still called me overdramatic, even when I showed her the bruises I couldn't explain. The first time I felt it, I was holding a brush. Mid-stroke. My fingers cramped so hard I dropped it. A normal person might shrug it off. But it kept happening. Cramping. Burning. Fatigue so deep it felt like something was pulling me into the earth. I went to the clinic. Small town, small answers. Probably stress, said Dr. Langford with his coffee breath and fake sympathy. Maybe fibromyalgia, you artistic types always think too much. Try yoga. Have you thought about antidepressants? It was always me. My anxiety. My history. My tone. Never my blood work. Never the fact that I couldn't walk upstairs without shaking. Never the fact that some days I'd lie on the bathroom floor for hours, numb from the waist down. I asked Jake, my boyfriend, to come with me to one of the appointments. He didn't even look up from his phone. You sure this isn't just one of your spirals? Spirals. As if being unable to feel your own goddamn legs was a quirk. The worst part? I started believing them. Started asking myself, what if I am making this up? What if this is just who I am? And then one night I collapsed. Right in the middle of the street after closing the art studio. My vision doubled, my knees gave out, and the world spun like I was underwater. They took me to Halecroft General. 3 hours on a gurney in the hallway. I remember the fluorescent lights humming above me, the nurse who rolled her eyes when I asked for water. And then she said you're not dying, sweetie. You're just anxious. I almost laughed. Because by then I'd started carrying a list of my symptoms in my coat pocket. 15 lines. Every one of them dismissed. They ran some routine tests and sent me home. Again. No diagnosis. No referrals. Just a pamphlet on panic attacks. I came home that night to find Jake playing video games with his headset on. I stood in the doorway. Pale. Shaking. He looked at me and said, "You scared me, you know. Don't do that again." Like I had a choice. 2 days later I got the call. A voicemail actually. Casual. Like they were telling me I'd left my keys. "Hi, this is Dr. Langford's office. We reviewed some labs. You'll want to follow up with a specialist. Looks like early markers for an autoimmune condition. Lupus or similar. Nothing urgent. Nothing urgent." I stood in the middle of the kitchen listening to that message again and again. Like if I rewound it enough it would sound more real. I wanted to scream. To burn the whole town down. Instead I told Jake. He blinked. "Lupus? Isn't that like a thing from house?" I said I'd need a specialist. Real doctors, not Halecroft hacks. He sighed. "Soph, we don't really have the money for all that." I stared at him. I'd spent the last 6 months rotting inside my own skin, and now that it had a name, he was more worried about the cost? That was the first fracture. But not the last. When I told my mom, she said, "That explains a lot. But you always were sensitive." I asked her if she could come with me to the hospital in the city for testing. She said she had church choir and that she'd pray hard. I was surrounded by ghosts and living bodies. The city hospital confirmed it. Systemic lupus erythematosus. Advanced. Possibly affecting my kidneys. Maybe my heart. They asked how long I'd had symptoms. I told them nearly a year. The doctor frowned. "A year untreated? You're lucky it didn't kill you." I wasn't sure I was lucky. By the time I started treatment, the damage had spread. My body wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the illness. The medications. The side effects. The isolation. Jake stayed for another 2 weeks. Then he started sleeping at his friend's place. One night, I went looking for him. Found him at a bar, arm around some girl in a glittery dress. He saw me. Didn't flinch. "I can't do this," he said. "You're just not who you used to be." I walked home in the dark. My legs numb again. My soul quieter than ever. A few weeks later, I learned something else. While I'd been fighting for my life, Jake had emptied our shared account. Gone. All of it. The man who'd held me in bed and said he'd love me even if I lost my hair. Had stolen my treatment money and vanished. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood in front of the mirror and whispered. "You let them do this to you. But never again." I shaved my head. I took the pills. I watched my skin pale, my eyes sharpen. I buried the girl they'd all ignored. And I started keeping a list. Of names. Of lies. Of debts that would be paid in full. One by one. Starting with Jake. They say revenge is a poison you pour for someone else and drink yourself. I disagree. Revenge is medicine. The kind that burns going down but heals what no doctor could ever touch. After Jake emptied our account, I had nothing. No savings. No support system. No more illusions. I pawned my studio equipment. Sold my car. Moved into a one-bedroom unit above a shuttered laundromat. The kind of place with mold in the corners and a heater that groaned like a dying animal. My body was a war zone and now so was my life. But something shifted. The girl who begged to be believed was gone. I stopped telling people how I felt. I stopped looking for sympathy in half-dead eyes. Instead, I started planning. My days were hospitals. My nights notebooks. Names. Patterns. Digital footprints. Jake. Dr. Langford. Nurse Cassidy, the one who mocked me behind the curtain. My mother. Even Pastor Reed, who told her I was being punished for turning away from faith. You don't forget that kind of betrayal. You log it. You sharpen it like glass. Somewhere in those weeks of hell I met Riley. She was in the chemo ward 2 doors down. Not for lupus leukemia. 25. Quiet. Wore combat boots and eyeliner like war paint. But her eyes, they knew. One night, we both ended up in the hallway at 3 a.m. She sat down beside me, cross-legged, for pole beside her like a knight's lance. You look like you're planning something, she said. I am, I replied. She grinned. Good. Too many people here waiting to die. I like the ones who scheme. We became allies. She taught me how to sleep sitting up, how to fake smiles for social workers. I taught her how to trace IP addresses, pull public records, hide money in plain sight. We weren't healing. We were arming up. Jake became the first project. He thought he ghosted me, walked away clean. But the idiot hadn't changed his email passwords. He was living in the city now. With Danielle, the girl in the glittery dress. They were posting soft launch selfies already. He'd bought her a bracelet, the same one he'd once promised me. Bought with my money. But the real prize was in his inbox. Applications for a marketing job at Zephyr Inc., an elite PR firm with a zero tolerance for ethical violations. Cute. I printed everything. Every lie. Every withdrawal. I mailed it to Zephyr's HR anonymously. 3 days later, he was unemployed. 2 days after that, Danielle dumped him. Apparently, broke and branded a scammer wasn't part of her aesthetic. But I didn't stop there. I created a burner profile and messaged his old college forum, anonymously leaking that Jake had once falsified volunteer hours to get his internship. I backed it up with a screenshot he'd once sent me bragging. His alumni network blacklisted him. Jake Miller, former golden boy, now radioactive. One down. But it wasn't just about him. Jake was the matchstick. The dry grass ran deeper. Dr. Langford was next. I filed a formal complaint with the state board backed with every medical record, every ignored lab result, every dated appointment. Riley helped me rewrite it in the voice of a paralegal. Cold. Precise. Undeniable. It got flagged for review. Langford would be investigated. If negligence was found, he'd lose his license. I imagined him opening that letter. Coffee going cold. The old smug smile draining from his face. 2 down. Still. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not joy. Just movement. Until Riley collapsed in the hallway. I found her curled under the window, lips blue, blood on her sleeve. I screamed for help. Pressed every button. Held her face while the nurses ran in, finally wide-eyed and urgent. Later, they told me her body had rejected the new round of chemo. Her numbers tanked. She was stable. For now. But in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I'd finally let someone in again. And she might not survive this place either. That night, I sat by her bed and whispered my secrets. Told her everything I'd done. Jake. Langford. What was next? She didn't open her eyes, but she smiled. I hope you finish it, she murmured. For both of us. I made a decision. If Riley didn't make it, I'd make them all remember her name. The hospital board. The nurses who cut corners. The administrators who denied her second treatment until the paperwork caught up. But fate had another twist waiting for me. The next morning, I got a call from my mother. A rare thing. Her voice was tight. Nervous. Not her usual judgmental calm. I found something, she said. I froze. What? In your father's things. A file. He kept records on you. On your health. My stomach dropped. He had your blood tests rerun. Years ago. Before he died. And he knew. He knew something was wrong. My world tilted sideways. He died 2 years ago. Sudden stroke. No warning. No final words. He had known. And he hadn't told me. But the worst part? The name on the test results wasn't his. It was Dr. Langford's. He'd signed off on them. Twice. He'd known even before I collapsed in the street. They let me rot. Not by accident. By choice. My hands were shaking. Not from the lupus. Not from the meds. From truth. My father, the man who raised me on integrity and Sunday sermons, had known. Langford had known. Years before the diagnosis. Years before the collapse. They both had access to the test results. And they both said nothing. I stared at the printout my mother had scanned and emailed. There it was. My name. Elevated ANA. Inflammatory markers. Classic lupus indicators. Signed off. Ignored. Filed away like I was just a bad dream they wanted to forget. That night, I sat in the dark, the hum of my old laptop the only sound in the room. Riley was still in ICU. The machines were breathing for her. I was breathing for both of us now. Langford had to pay. But I knew filing complaints and mailing documents wouldn't cut it anymore. Not for what he did. I needed to burn him from the inside. Make the system eat him alive. So I found the weak link, his reputation. Langford was more than a doctor, he was a speaker. A conference darling. He'd given talks about early detection in autoimmune patients at 3 national conventions. The irony nearly made me choke. I dug deeper. Found a medical ethics group he was affiliated with, the Grayson Circle. I joined their public forum under an alias, Eva Grant. I started a thread titled, "My doctor ignored my autoimmune symptoms for years. Now I'm dying. What would you do?" The post exploded overnight. Dozens of women shared horror stories. Some knew Langford. One had been in the same waiting room as me. I messaged them privately. Cross-referenced dates. Turns out he routinely dismissed autoimmune red flags in young women. Claimed they were anxious, hormonal, or addicted to Google. We built a dossier. 22 names. 2 misdiagnosed deaths. One woman who developed kidney failure because he missed her lupus flare, like me. I sent everything to Grayson Circle's director, posing as an investigative journalist. With backup from Riley's cousin, an actual reporter, we pushed it to MedNet Weekly. A week later, Langford was suspended pending review. His name was in headlines. Renowned doctor under investigation for ignoring women's autoimmune symptoms. But the world wasn't done serving me rot. 3 days after the article dropped, I received a message from a private number. "You need to stop." Then a file attachment. It was a copy of my entire medical history, including psychiatric notes from when I was 15. Notes no one should have had. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was Langford's clinic header. He was threatening me, trying to discredit me with my past trauma, painting me as unstable. A hysterical woman lashing out. Classic. But he made one mistake. He CC'd the email to himself, using a hospital staff account. I had what I needed, proof he violated patient confidentiality to silence me. I didn't even flinch. I sent it straight to the legal office of the hospital board. Then posted the redacted version on the Grayson forum. Within 24 hours, Langford was removed from the board. Within 72, the hospital announced an internal investigation. I thought that would bring peace. But all I felt was more clarity. Every person who ignored me had blood on their hands. Every delayed prescription. Every nurse who rolled her eyes. Every administrator who treated me like a statistic. And I was going to make every one of them remember me. Especially Cassidy. The nurse who once said, "You're not the only sick girl here, sweetheart," when I told her my chest hurt at 3 a.m. She'd filed a formal complaint against me, back then, said I was disruptive and non-compliant. That note followed me to every ER in the city. Made doctors treat me like I was exaggerating. Like I was crazy. I found her LinkedIn. She was now head nurse at a wellness clinic in a rich suburb. Branded herself as a compassionate care advocate. I created a fake patient account. Booked an appointment. When I arrived, she didn't recognize me at first. I let her guide me to the private room. Let her do her little speech about holistic care and listening to women. Then I took out a voice recorder. Hi, Cassidy, I said. Remember me? I used to be patient 4187. The girl you said was faking chest pain. Her eyes widened. She froze. What is this? This, I said, turning the recorder on, is your reckoning. I asked her every question I wished I'd screamed years ago. Why did you ignore me? Why did you call security instead of helping me? Did I scare you that much? Or did you just not care? She fumbled. Apologized. Said she didn't remember. Tried to blame protocol. But I already had what I needed. I uploaded the recording to a private site and sent the link to her clinic director, labeled. Your head nurse once said this to a dying patient. 2 days later, her clinic bio was gone. She'd resigned. 3 down. I returned home that night. Sat in my broken chair. Breathed the old chemical air. Victory wasn't sweet. It was quiet. I picked up my phone to call Riley's cousin. I wanted to give her the next batch of names. But when I opened my texts, I froze. A message sat at the top. From Riley. But it wasn't Riley. It was her number with a message that said, "You should stop digging. Some of us weren't who we said we were." I stared at it. Cold crawled up my spine. I replied, "Who is this?" 3 dots. Then a photo came through. A group shot. 4 people. Langford, Jake, Cassidy, and Riley. Standing together. Laughing. Like old friends. Riley. I said her name out loud like it might break the spell. Like it might undo the photo burning on my phone screen. But it didn't. There she was, my roommate, my hospital sister, the only person I thought I could trust, smiling next to Langford, Jake, and Cassidy. Jake. My ex. The same Jake who ghosted me when I got sick. The same Jake who told my friends I was making it up for sympathy. I dropped the phone. My whole chest throbbed. Not a flare. This was something worse. Betrayal that cut into my spine. I stormed into Riley's hospital room that night. She was awake barely. Propped up on pillows, IVs running into both arms. Looking weak. Small. But that photo lived in my head like a war drum. And there was no pity left in me. Tell me what this is, I snapped, shoving the screen in her face. Her eyes flicked to the image. No confusion. No denial. Just quiet. I can explain, she whispered. Explain what? My voice cracked. That you lied to me for 2 years? That you pretended to be sick while feeding everything I said to Langford and his pack of vultures? She didn't answer. I backed away. My breath came shallow. Every piece of me wanted to scream, flip the tray, rip out her fore and drag her to hell with me. But I needed truth. Did you even have lupus? I asked. She shook her head slowly. My knees gave out. I dropped into the plastic chair next to the bed and stared at her like she was a stranger. Because she was. You told me you had organ damage. That you couldn't drive anymore. That your mom had lupus too. I read your charts before I ever met you, she said quietly. Langford asked me to keep tabs. To befriend you. Make sure you didn't make trouble. I didn't know how bad it would get. My throat went dry. You were my only friend, I said. The only person who didn't make me feel crazy. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. But you did. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. I couldn't tell if they were real. Didn't care. You told Jake I was faking, didn't you? A pause. Yes. That was the final nail. I stood up and walked out. Didn't say another word. Let her rot. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote. I documented everything. Not for lawsuits. Not for sympathy. For war. I opened a new folder on my computer. Exposure, Phase 2. If Langford, Cassidy, and Riley thought I was going to disappear like all the other girls, they didn't know what I was becoming. I went public. I uploaded a full video under my real name. No filter. No cuts. Just me. My story. My body. My voice. My fury. I showed them my pills. My rashes. My hospital bills. My scars. And then I told the world about Riley. About Langford. About the photo. About the silence that almost killed me. The video exploded. 120,000 views in 3 days. Then a call from a journalist at the Voxline Review. They wanted to do a podcast. 6 parts. Focused on me and the other women. I agreed. But only if I could name names. They said yes. I was no longer asking for justice. I was building the guillotine. But things got darker. Jake messaged me. You think you're brave? You're ruining lives. Riley tried to kill herself because of you. I didn't reply. The next day, someone sent a dead rat to my mailbox, wrapped in one of my old hospital gowns. Blood soaked through the cotton. No note. But I didn't need one. They were trying to scare me. They didn't realize I'd already died once. I kept going. I printed every harassment message, every death threat, every veiled warning, and I sent them to the hospital board, the state medical licensing bureau, and the press. Then I did something I swore I never would. I contacted my father. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since I found out he knew about the misdiagnosis and said nothing. But I needed information only he had. He picked up after 3 rings. Voice tired. Older than I remembered. I don't want to fight, he said. I'm not here for that, I said. I just want to know, how early did Langford know? He paused. 4 years before your collapse. I clenched my jaw. Why didn't you tell me? Because he said it would ruin your chances. That no one would hire you if they saw autoimmune on your chart. He lied. I know. I hated him. But I understood now, Langford manipulated everyone. Even my family. And he wasn't going to stop unless I did something final. So I made my last move. I sent the entire file, everything from the forum, the voice recording of Cassidy, my chat logs with Riley, and the internal documents my father finally agreed to hand over, to the state attorney general's office. Then I called a meeting with a civil rights lawyer, and 2 of the other women Langford had ignored. We filed a class action lawsuit. 25 plaintiffs. Dozens of counts. Names named. It hit the news like wildfire. Langford vanished from social media. Cassidy deleted everything. Riley's phone went offline. But I wasn't done. I booked a speaking event at the very hospital where it all started, Hollow Creek Medical. The same auditorium Langford used to brag in. And when I stepped onto the stage, every eye turned to me. I told them everything. Raw. Ugly. Personal. And at the very end I said, if I had died, they would have buried me with a lie. But I lived. And now they get to be buried under the truth. The applause didn't matter. The press didn't matter. Only one thing did. Langford wasn't there. Because he was already running. But I wasn't chasing him anymore. I was setting the trap. Because the one place I hadn't touched yet was his family. His daughter. Mira Langford. 4th-year med student. About to match at the same hospital that silenced me. She sent me a message 2 hours after my speech. Why are you dragging my name into this? My dad didn't do anything wrong. And I replied, open your inbox. I'd sent her everything. The entire dossier. Her father's emails. His fake diagnostics. The threats. The photo with Riley. It was time she knew who her father really was. I thought I was done. I thought after the lawsuit, after the speech, after every dark corner had been dragged into daylight, I could finally breathe. But then Mira Langford messaged me again. We need to talk. In person. I hesitated. This could have been a trap. A setup. Or just a daughter scrambling to defend the only version of her father she'd ever known. But something about the way she wrote it felt like the girl I used to be, before I saw the monster under the mask. So I agreed. We met in a tiny cafe off Lexington. Neutral ground. Midday crowd. No shadows to hide in. She was already there when I arrived. A manila envelope on the table. Coffee untouched. Her hands were trembling. I read everything, she said quietly, not looking at me. I wanted to hate you. But I can't. I sat. Waited. She slid the envelope toward me. He had another identity, she said. Before he was Dr. Langford. Before we moved to Hollow Creek. I opened the file. Inside were legal documents. Sealed court records. A name change affidavit. My stomach dropped. He was sued once before, she continued. 20 years ago. In a different state. Same pattern, autoimmune misdiagnosis. 2 women died. My hands shook as I scanned the pages. Why are you giving this to me? I asked. Because I need to believe I'm not like him, she said. I want to become a doctor who heals people, not buries them. For a long time I just sat there staring at the papers, the weight of it all pressing into my lungs. This was it. The final piece. With this, the board couldn't protect him anymore. Not even his past could hide behind legal tape. He was done. I released the documents that night. Public. Verified. Tracked. Shared across every platform I'd built. Langford has done this before. He changed his name to erase the evidence. But the dead remember. The media went nuclear. The lawsuit expanded. The licensing board opened a criminal investigation. His name, once carved into marble outside the hospital wing, was stripped clean within 48 hours. But still I didn't feel peace. Until the email came. From a burner account. No name. No subject line. Just 4 words. He turned himself in. Attached was a local news article. Mugshot. Charges. Statement from the prosecutor. Langford had walked into a courthouse that morning and surrendered. Wire fraud. Malpractice. Criminal negligence. Witness tampering. He'd be facing 30 years. I sat on my floor and cried for the first time in months. Not because I was sad. Because I was free. But revenge doesn't clean up the wreckage. It only stops the bleeding. Cassidy lost her job. No charges filed, but her career was over. Jake vanished. His name was dragged so thoroughly he deleted every account and moved out of state. Riley, well, she tried to write me a letter. I didn't read it. Some things don't get redemption. But Mira changed. She stayed in Hollow Creek. Took over the lupus advocacy group I used to run. Volunteers with patient rights now. Sends me updates sometimes. She says I gave her a reason to be a better doctor. Maybe that's true. Or maybe she just needed a way out of her father's shadow. As for me, I moved to a different city. Got an apartment with windows that face the sun. Most mornings I sit with my coffee and trace the scars on my arms, not from self-harm. From IVs. From biopsies. From being believed too late. And I remember. Not out of bitterness. But as proof that I survived. That every time they told me it was in my head, they were building the kindling for the fire that would burn them down. People message me now. Hundreds. Sometimes thousands. Girls just like me. Sick, scared, gaslit. And I always say the same thing. Start writing it all down. Because one day, they'll try to pretend you never existed. And you'll show them the receipts. I still have flares. Still take meds. Still wake up sometimes in a panic, thinking I'm back in that ER, hearing Cassidy's voice telling me I'm just overwhelmed. But then I breathe. And I remember who I am now. Not just a survivor. A reckoning. Last week, I got a certified letter. Langford had tried to reach out. From prison. My hands hovered over the envelope for a long time. Then I tore it open. Inside was a single page. No apology. No justification. Just one sentence. I never thought you'd fight back. I smiled. Then I set the letter on fire. Watched it curl and blacken and disappear. And for the first time since this war began, I felt something close to peace. Because he was right. He never saw me coming.